If there is one thing that we all love about video games, it's to break free from the shackles and constraints of the real world and to do whatever we please no matter what. If you are like me, that means you'll be obsessed with picking up and stealing every single object that the game lets you, regardless of the legality of the situation. If there is one game I especially like stealing in, it's Oblivion. But I already started recording a different video for that game a while ago, so instead, today we'll be shifting our focus on Fallout 4 as I aim to find out, can you beat Fallout 4 with only stolen items? I already attempted this in New Vegas, card up top if you're curious, but if I learned anything from that playthrough, it's that guns are less than ideal, as other than a few bullets here and there, it's hard to steal ammo in large quantities. That means melee is the way to go, and if you've been around the channel for a while, then you know that suits me just fine. Now, with all that out of the way, let's begin. After coming up with the perfect name, I get to work assigning my special stats. They may look horribly optimised, and if I'm being honest, they are, but the plan was to have access to as many defense-based perks as possible, such as Toughness and the Lone Wanderer. Simply put, I don't think I'm going to find a lot of armour this playthrough. Due to the way Fallout 4 is, other than Diamond City and a few other small settlements like Covenant and Bunker Hill, there isn't a lot of variety in what I can steal. Diamond City, being the capital, will of course be the de facto place for me to get most of my arsenal, but I also don't want to just sprint straight there. While you could make the argument that everything outside of my house and sanctuary belong to my now zombie neighbours, and therefore I could now steal these items, I am not going to do that, as the only items I can use are those specifically marked as stolen by the game. With nothing for me in Sanctuary, I headed for Abernathy Farm, as despite it being a small settlement, there's a lot of stuff for me to rob in the big house of theirs. Everything in the settlement is marked as stolen until I help them with their problems, so I opt to just grab everything I can now. Considering even the most basic of objects can be scrapped into useful materials for making weapon and armor upgrades, I really do take everything from food and healing supplies to empty buckets and silverware. I'm also fortunate enough to come across my first weapon here, a single Molotov cocktail and the ever faithful pipe pistol. Now here's the thing, just about every single non-hostile human NPC in the game carries ammo for the pipe pistol as well as usually the weapon itself. This would mean I should be set for most of the run, and you would be correct. Thing is though, I very recently went through the whole game with an unmodded pipe pistol, and personally I don't really feel like using it again if I can help it. So I made another stupid rule for myself, not part of the challenge but more so a personal one. That being, unless it was absolutely necessary, I would not use the pipe pistol so long as I had other weapons. It's a dumb rule, I know, but as it stands, I need to use it now anyway as it's the only weapon the Abernathys have for me to take. In terms of protection, all I could find was some rags and a chef's hat. They offer 0 protection, so that's neat. Anyway, before offering to help with the nearby raider problem, I used the materials I gathered in and around the farm to craft myself some jet. If I can't protect myself from harm, I can at the very least be high enough that I won't feel the pain. On the way to see how I do against a whole gang of raiders, I nearly get killed by just 2 of them. Who would have thought that running around with a terrible weapon and essentially no clothes would lead to me being so unprepared for combat? Arriving at the station, and it's a rough start for Klepto Kevin as I pistol whip a nearby mole rat who just so happened to be wearing a backpack filled with high-grade explosives, meaning the bones in my legs have now been reduced to jello. While I could crawl my way to the station, slowly taking on the raiders, I decide I don't want to do that and use my single stim pack to restore my ability to run. It's not a huge setback to be fair, as I stole a lot of food from the farm, and spoiler alert, food is going to be an absolute lifesaver for the rest of the run. Finishing off the raiders outside is simple enough, probably goes without saying, but I have some experience using the basic pipe pistol now. Inside the station, and honestly it's more of the same. Sure, Ak and her minigun are quite terrifying, but it's nothing some drug abuse and headshots can't handle. With their leader out of the picture, the rest of the raiders are nothing to write home about, and before long I can report my success to the Abernathys and begin rebuilding the Minutemen, all before even knowing what a Preston is. Finishing the quest, coupled with all that murder XP, gets me enough to level up twice and take the idiot savant and pickpocket perks. I put the pickpocket perk to the test right away, as I rob Blake of his shotgun, as well as a few shells for it. While the ammo is very limited, that doesn't stop me from using it to obliterate the raiders harassing Preston outside the Museum of Freedom. A shotgun with 4 shells and a pipe pistol with very little ammo is not exactly the best way to handle a Deathclaw, so I leave Preston hanging for the time being as I make my way down the street and use my aggressive charms to rob Carla of 50 caps. I should probably bring up how I'm going to use money now. I am not allowing myself to purchase anything with it other than paying doctors to heal me. I figured this keeps things nice and simple, as otherwise I could just patiently steal a bunch of caps and buy an overpowered weapon, and that would be that. Back on track, I walked down to the Drumlin Diner, and I want to say for the first time in my life actually resolved the situation between Trudy and Wolfgang peacefully. I then carefully stole what I could from Trudy right under her nose, even going as far to employ the old Van Graff's trick by carrying the items out of sight and pocketing them when no one was looking. It was mostly more food and materials for crafting, so nothing worth going over in detail. As I was in the area, I also decided to clear out another settlement, that being the Starlight Drive-In. It's a rather easy area to clear out. Correction, it's an easy area to clear out if you play it smart and don't run straight up to the irradiated rat with rabies while on the verge of death. With 2 settlements under my belt, I figured I could begin making my way for Diamond City now. Or, that's what I would say if I didn't get sidetracked and ended up in Covenant instead. It may not be the biggest settlement by any means, but there are a fair few buildings that have just enough items begging to be stolen by yours truly. Yet again, mostly just crafting materials like adhesive and screws, so at least when I get a weapon worth modding, I'll be good to go. Speaking of which, I was able to nab myself a 10mm pistol along with some ammo. That's actually a nice find as it's a reliable weapon for most of the game, assuming I can continue to find ammo for it. I also get a few more basic healing supplies and then take a relatively safe route to Diamond City. Things begin to look up for me before even entering the city, as after I take out some dogs with the help of a nearby guard, I manage to steal his baseball bat from him, therefore giving me a very good weapon that I will never have to stop using because weapon durability just isn't a thing in Fallout 4. Keeping with this trend of good luck, I even managed to snag an actual piece of armor from Piper and get myself some road leathers. I am aware the damage resistance I provide is minuscule at best, but it is better than the literal nothing I have at the moment. I also swipe Kellogg's key from the mayor now, so I don't have to trek up to his office later. Before beginning the heist of the century, I go and upgrade my weapons with the materials I currently have on hand. First, of course, is the bat, as from this point on I plan to hard focus into getting the most damage out of it as possible, be it by perks or modifications. Going from house to house stealing everything that wasn't nailed down was honestly a piece of cake. I just had to make sure that I entered whenever the owners were out, and from there it was easy pickings. The most notable items that I grabbed in my opinion were an army helmet and a single mini nuke from Arturo's house. As for the rest of the buildings, it was just your standard 38 rounds, food, purified water, and basic medical supplies like stim packs and a few things of RADaway and RADX. Rather than go over everything in detail, here's a quick look at everything in my inventory, just to give you all an idea of what I'm working with for the time being. As kitted out as I possibly could be, now seemed like the best possible time to go and face off against the Raiders in the Museum of Freedom. Well, surprise surprise, the upgraded baseball bat manages to quickly smack path right through them in no time at all. When it comes time to head back outside and face the Deathclaw, I of course cannot use the minigun or power armor, so instead I have to rely on crits with my hunting rifle, along with the Deathclaw's inability to squeeze past most doorways, something I know all too well unfortunately. I played this very patiently, as while I could just kill him by shooting him repeatedly with the rifle, I wanted to use VATS to make sure I was hitting his weak point as well as having access to crits to make sure I could use the least amount of ammo as physically possible. After reporting back to Preston, I thought now would be a good time to get the Minutemen's Radiant Quests part out of the way, so I could just focus on the main story. First up as usual is 10 Pounds Bluff and their mission to take out Jared and his gang at the Corvega assembly plant. On the way there, I ended up travelling back to Covenant so I could help Honest Dan as we staged a 2-man rescue on the compound to find the maybe synth daughter of Old Man Stockton. The guards here hit fairly hard, but thankfully Dan acts as a pretty useful distraction while I chow down on some snacks to get back into fighting shape. It's not a very long quest and in no way integral to the overall plot or video. I just felt like doing it because the best part of Fallout 4 is its combat, so sometimes I just want to have some mindless fun with my overly edgy baseball bat. Besides, after the quest is done, I go and clear out Covenant, and I think now that it's one of my settlements, it technically goes towards my minimum requirement needed for finishing the main quest with the Minutemen, so that's nice. To properly get back on track, I did make my way to the Corvega plant and was in and out of there in less than 5 minutes, thanks to a one-shot sneak attack on Jared. One settlement down, God knows how many to go, as next up it was time to deal with a hostage situation. If that sounds like it might be a unique quest to you, well, sadly it isn't. In fact, it's the usual quest that you get for helping out Oberlin Station. The only difference is the quest doesn't end as soon as you kill Clutch, but rather after you rescue the settler being held captive. With Oberlin Station under our wing, it's time to head for Finch Farm. On the journey, I do go a little out of my way to secure Tavington Boathouse as another settlement as well. This proved to be a lot more difficult than I initially thought, as the bat was so slow that more often than not the blood bugs would just stun me before I got a chance to fight back. At this stage I was still trying to conserve what ammo I had, so in my eyes using my guns was not an option. VATS comes in clutch here because as far as I'm aware, you can't be interrupted while using it in Fallout 4. As most of you know, Finch Farm has a unique quest tied to it, that being getting the shish kebab back from the forge at the ironworks just down the road. Thing is though, I have a feeling the forge will both literally and figuratively burn through all of my healing supplies, as they can be quite tough in the early game, plus I have no real protection from fire damage at all. With that in mind, I once more ready the bat and get to work disposing of the Finch family at the farm. Sure, this will fail the quest for the Minutemen, but I do gain access to the workshop and settlement once they're all dead, so it's not all bad. Surprisingly, Preston isn't all that bothered by the situation and just points me in the direction of Sunshine Tidings for yet another adventure. The ferals inhabiting the place are easy to put down, as most can't stand up to a single swing from the chain-wrapped bat. With one final settlement under our control, it was now time for the moment I'd been waiting for, retaking the castle. Now, for as effective as the bat has been thus far, I am no fool. As of right now, it is nowhere near strong enough for me to take out an entire family of crabs, along with their queen. Thankfully, I had a backup plan specifically for this moment. Remember a while ago when we went to Arturo's and stole that mini nuke? Well, that was for this very moment, as I happen to know just the place where I can also procure a stolen Fat Man to help put the odds in our favour. The place I need to go to is Good Neighbour, and while that should have taken me no less than 10 minutes running there from Diamond City, I somehow got completely lost as I forgot to check my map and ended up marking seemingly all of the areas around Good Neighbour before stumbling upon the entrance. There are two scripted events that occur in Good Neighbour. The first event is being approached by Finn the very first time you visit, which is always followed by his death. And the second event happens when you reload the area after this, where Hancock calls a town meeting. It's this second scripted segment that I'm planning to use and abuse. The easiest way to activate it is just to enter and leave one of the buildings in town, and then you will notice everyone running to meet Hancock. When this happens, I make my way over to Cleo's weapon shop and can easily steal the Fat Man leaning against the counter, along with the second mini nuke for my troubles. I do manage to grab some more weapons, those being a few frag grenades, and more ammo for all of my guns. Being as prepared as I probably could be, I made my way for the castle to throw down with the crabs. The normal Mirelurks were of no trouble, as some well-placed headshots with a 10mm pistol was usually enough to kill them all. In fact, this is pretty much the only time I used the 10mm pistol in the whole run, as I needed just about all the ammo I had for it to take out all of the Mirelurks. The Minutemen with Preston certainly help, but it's more so in the meat shield department as opposed to actually fighting back. The normal Mirelurks are of course not the issue, it's after I get done making scrambled eggs of the babies when the real fight begins. To get the most possible damage with the two mini nukes, I made sure to bank 2 crits in VATS, and to my surprise, that still wasn't enough to take down the Queen. Considering the nukes also momentarily took out Preston and the gang, the Queen now had her pincers dead set on me. The fight from this point should have realistically only lasted another 10 seconds at most, as after all, I did have those 3 frag grenades still from Cleo. But I am me, and I completely forgot about them for 10 minutes as I slowly lured the Queen and her entourage in circles around the castle, only briefly stopping to take pot shots when I thought I could get away with it. After my brain decided to catch up with me and do its job, I remembered about the last of my explosive ordnance, and the fight ended very shortly afterwards. I then set up the radio that none of you can hear due to copyright reasons, and figured now I could finally start the actual main quest while I waited for Ronnie Shaw to show up at the castle. Saving Nick from the clutches of the gangsters was rather straightforward, thanks in large part again to the bat. I also picked up the Bloody Mess perk along the way to truly get the most out of the situation. With the android back in Diamond City and breakfast cereal's key already in my pocket, we headed straight for his house, and it was time to pretend to follow Dogmeat towards the plot. Heading south to Fort Hagen, I made a quick pit stop at the Federal Ration stockpile for some easy experience. To switch things up just a little, I entered through the back door in the church so I could get the jump on Red and her goons. This worked better than I could have thought, as I got 2 easy hits off on Red, painting the wall with her name. It was around here that I realised just how much the bat was and would carry me through this run, so I decided to give it an appropriate name as to immortalise it forevermore. The rest of the raiders didn't put up much of a fight from this point on, as I turned them into overly violent pinatas thanks to the Bloody Mess perk. Moving ahead a bit after dealing with the raiders, it was time to assault Fort Hagen and see just how I fare against the synths. As I expected, not well. In one of the biggest oversights this run, I forgot to put enough points into perception to have access to the refractor perk, which would allow me to have even a little bit of energy resistance. This meant that from this point on, I would be at quite the disadvantage when fighting the Institute. On the bright side, while they do inflict a lot of damage, they can't really take it, as most of my strikes are able to take off a limb with each hit. If I'm lucky enough, I will take out the hand that is holding the weapon, which would then make the rest of the encounter an absolute cakewalk. Speaking of walking through cake, Kellogg was a complete pushover. Some alcohol for strength buffs coupled with a psycho-induced crit led to an easy 2-shot on the edgy balding cyborg. As expected, his synth guards proved to be more of a headache yet again. After they were out of the picture, I am hit with essentially a run-ending scenario, as I need to take Kellogg's brain cybernetic, along with his terminal password, to be able to progress with the story. While these are not items I'll be using outside of story-specific scenarios, I see them in the same vein as something like the Platinum chip from New Vegas. The difference being, in that game I was able to bypass the chip by just siding with the NCR. Sadly here you're required to kill Kellogg and take his brain giblets to further the plot. With that said, no, you cannot beat Fallout 4 with only stolen items. But we are so far into this that I may as well continue as is. Making my way back to Diamond City, and I give Sheffield one of my Nuka-Colas, and then ship him off to the castle where he will no doubt be killed during the assault later in the story. Doing this reminded me of something people have suggested to me before in the comments, that to make the defense of the castle a lot less headache-inducing, that I should send all companions there ahead of time so that I can help with the fight, so that's exactly what I would do. I'm getting a little ahead of myself here though, as next it was everyone's favourite scripted segment that we all wish we could skip on repeated playthroughs, the Memory Den. Before diving headfirst into a big green blizzard, I was contacted by the castle, meaning it was time to meet up with Ronnie Shaw. The only difficult part of this quest is fighting Sarge, but to my surprise he goes down rather anticlimactically if you have a decent melee weapon, as you can just get him stuck in a loop of stuns and blocks. Ronnie ended up making this whole ordeal take longer than necessary as she kept phasing through to the other side of the door, effectively soft-locking me when she wouldn't activate the terminal. Like most issues in these games though, just reloading to save multiple times seemed to fix it for whatever reason. With the Minutemen now ready to help me in the endgame, all that was left was heading through the glowing sea. I made the smart call to go and steal some necessary supplies from the Diamond City Clinic, as the sea, followed by the gunners in the Green Tech building, has always proven to be a little rough. Stopping to fight anything in the glowing sea would have been the absolute worst idea, given that every second I am there, I am wasting limited Radaway and Radex supplies. To that end, I just booked it as fast as I could to Virgil's Cave. While I need to be here to progress the story, I almost completely forgot that everything in the cave is something I can steal, so it was time for another haul of items. Yet again, more of the usual basic materials and healing supplies with the odd piece of ammo. But the one thing that stood out the most was the pocketed combat armor left leg in the steamer trunk in the back of the cave. While to most that's not a huge deal, let's keep in mind up to this point my only protection has consisted of an old leather jacket and a dirty army helmet, so to me, this small piece of leg armor was one of the best finds of the run. I also would need it too, because as you can imagine, the gunners pack quite a punch. It's fairly similar to the situation in Fort Hagen, as the Courser was of no concern to me, yet the gunners, especially the one with the missile launcher, proved to make getting to the top a lot more difficult than it had any right to be. Not helping matters was the fact that a lot of the gunners were also carrying laser pistols, so I had to guzzle down more purified water than I was comfortable with. By the time I got to the Courser, I just 3-tapped him back to the scrapyard before feeling the challenge yet again due to having to grab the damn chip. Want to hear something funny? In a majority of these Fallout 4 runs, one of the very first things I do is go and wipe out the railroad, one part because it's fun, and also you can get a lot of supplies to help you in the early game. Of course, for whatever reason I did not do that this time around, and it was probably the biggest mistake of the run, as I completely forgot that because you are not allied with them when you go purging, every single item is marked as stolen, meaning it's honestly an even bigger gold mine for this type of playthrough than Diamond City. Needless to say, I am very annoyed with myself for not going on a killing spree here earlier, as the sheer amount of healing supplies, be it water, food and even stim packs, would have certainly helped out in the early game. At the very least, I am grateful for getting these supplies now, as after decoding the chip and building the teleporter with Sturges, I am transported to the Institute where I immediately whack Father so I can just proceed to the final part of the Minutemen's questline. It was now time to defend the castle, and thanks to the help of all of you suggesting I send my companions here, along with finally putting all the materials I collected to good use in the form of turrets, this was honestly the easiest time I ever had with this quest. The synths still do kill me rather quickly, but as I am at the literal end game, I have no issues using all of my healing supplies if necessary. That's not to say I don't die here, of course I still do. It's just a lot more manageable than it usually is, which is a welcome change. The Coursers are especially easy to deal with as their invisibility means nothing to other NPCs, and they're able to spot them no matter what. After I'm finished bada bing bada batting my enemies, I return to Sturges to get the location of the entrance, and begin the final quest of the main story. The overly aggressive laser turrets in the sewers, like always, surprise me with their damage output and result in my death. Not to worry, as on my next attempt I make use of what was left of my hunting rifle to take them down from a relatively safe distance. When it's time to transport in the Minuteman, Preston walks up and essentially spits in my face as he hands me the fusion pulse charge, effectively filling the run for the third time now. As for the rest of the quest, it plays out how you might expect. I just swing my bat like a madman at anything wearing white clothing until the game tells me I can proceed to the next area. I then pass the spectral ghost of Father-Son before sprinting past everyone in the reactor room, as there was no way I was taking all of them on with the bat, no matter how much it's carried me through this playthrough. With that, the day is saved, I leave the robot child to die, crack Preston across the side of the head, blow up the Institute, finishing the game, and proving no, you cannot beat Fallout 4 with only stolen items. Despite the inevitable failures in the second part of the story, the run was still quite enjoyable throughout. That said, if it wasn't for the baseball bat, I dare say this would have been near impossible, or simply would have ended up looking a lot like my gun bashing video. Regardless, that's going to be this challenge video. If you enjoyed what you saw, consider giving the video a like and you're interested in more challenges in the future. Feel free to subscribe to our videos out every week. My name is Nerbit. Stay safe everyone, I'll see y'all in the next video.